Satoshi Kon's 1997 psychological masterpiece, Perfect Blue, has befuddled the minds of anyone who has watched it. The line between fiction and reality blur as one woman's mind unravels while she's stalked by an obsessive fan and gruesome murders take place. I hold this movie in high regard since I see it as the gateway that helped me watch more challenging movies when I first watched it when I was 17 years old. And since then, despite the dense plot and violent scenes, Perfect Blue has continued to fascinate me. And it wasn't until last year when I read the source material that it's based on, Perfect Blue, Complete Metamorphosis by Yoshikazu Takeuchi. Much like the movie, I found it spellbinding to read. It's somehow even more vile and revolting, and even though the film takes so many creative liberties from it, it's interesting to see where it all came from and how Satoshi Kon was able to craft such a unique story from it. So that's what I'm doing today, going through both the film and book to find out what's similar, what's different, what's very different, because I find it all to be so fascinating. Though I should mention this is actually a light novel, which is basically young adult fiction from Japan, similar to how manga is used to specify comics from Japan or anime for animation. Though I'm going to go back and forth on book and light novel depending on how I'm feeling. So now let's dive into the world of Perfect Blue by first talking about its background. After Takeuchi published Perfect Blue, Complete Metamorphosis in 1991, he wanted a film adaptation. It was originally planned to be a live-action feature film, but after not being able to receive funding due to the 1995 Kobe earthquake, it was downgraded to a direct-to-video movie, then an animated direct-to-video movie, so an OVA, which meant it was for a very niche audience, and it would vanish into obscurity as soon as it was released. Meanwhile, Kon had finished working on an OVA for JoJo's Bizarre Adventures for the animation studio Madhouse when he was approached with the opportunity to begin his first ever venture into directing, an adaptation of the light novel. So Kon created Perfect Blue as an OVA, and since it wasn't planned with the general audience in mind, it was allowed to be a lot more mature than what would be shown on TV or in the theater. However, just before production wrapped up, it was decided that it was going to be released as a movie, so it was invited to over 50 film festivals around the world, including Fantasia Fest in Montreal, Canada, where it had its premiere in 1997. Eventually, it found its way to the US, with distribution company G-Kids getting the rights to sell it on Blu-ray, as well as this mighty fine steelbook that's in my possession, and will actually be getting a 4K theatrical re-release in a couple weeks as I'm recording this. But let's go back to the movie's pre-production. Kon didn't actually read the light novel when directing the movie, he just read a rough synopsis when the idea was pitched to him, so that's a huge reason why the movie is so different, which Takeuchi was fine with. However, he did ask Kon to keep 3 main themes in the film: idol, stalker, and horror. There are also many characters that have the same name, so when I need to differentiate the characters, I'll refer to them as movie Mima or book Rumi. However, the stalker in the light novel is unnamed, while the one in the movie is, so the movie character will be named Mimania, and the light novel one will be the stalker. And in case it wasn't obvious yet, I will be getting into spoilers for both stories, so if you have not at the very least seen the movie, what are you doing here? Go watch it, then get back to me. I'll mainly be following the chronology of the light novel while scenes from the movie get shelved around since it's not actually a one-to-one adaptation of its source material. And this gives me an excuse to try out being an audiobook narrator. So let's begin, shall we? We have the very first line of the book and already my brain is going, haha, reference. Yumiko gazed at where cinnabar slowly consumed the blue. The opening of the light novel is from the perspective of a very young girl named Yumiko, who's sitting by herself in a sandbox at a playground while the sun's beginning to set. Just as she begins walking home, the stalker appears. There's multiple instances where characters are approached by him, and for one reason or another most of his facial features are obscured. This is the first instance. The man was dressed in a whitish t-shirt and baggy jeans. He wore faintly dirty leather shoes. On the front of his t-shirt, a cute, anime-style girl looked back at her. The girl was from a TV show Yumiko had watched many times, but she couldn't remember the character's name. The setting sun, directly behind the stranger's face, obscured his features in relative darkness. The effect only made him more unnerving. And the stalker, surprisingly, speaks. "Oju-chan, little girl," he said, his voice weak and unimpressive, oddly scratchy and high-pitched. This stalker is such a specimen. His breath is being described as having an animal stench and foul bestial smell. The stalker grabs hold of her, very tightly so, and after some resistance, Yumiko relents, so he abducts her. Yumiko felt her body go slack. Deep down, she realized that no matter how hard she resisted, she would never escape his grip. He scooped up her body with ease and carried her into the thicket. Yumiko's mind, distant now, wondered where she was being taken. For some reason, she felt oddly calm, like she was no longer herself. So already, this is a whole lot different from the movie. The stalker speaks in his introductory scene, unlike the movie where he's silent for a huge portion of it, and he doesn't do any malicious things yet. He just gives off creepy vibes. I mean, look at him. Speaking of the movie, let's talk about it. It begins with a Power Rangers type group of superheroes defeating a villain, only for the camera to pan out and we discover it's a stage show. By the first minute, Satoshi Kon has established a blurred line between what's real and what's not. He decided to begin his psychological thriller with a campy Super Sentai scene to trick audiences into believing they put in the wrong movie into the disc player. Oh wait, this is the 90s, so I guess VHS players would be more likely. Anyways, the camera begins tracking the crowd outside the venue. We see male fans, discuss rumors about Mima Kirigoe, one of the members of the out-of-group Cham, leaving after they performed today. Meanwhile, a fan is selling fanzines, cleverly named Chamming but no one is taking them. This is the only time they're brought up in the movie, and it's just a one-off thing, but they are more prominent in the light novel, which I'll get to. Anyway, we cut to the girls from Cham scrambling to get ready, as once they get on stage, they start performing the absolute bop that is Einaudi, or Angel of Love. It's so good. Why is the soundtrack not on Spotify? The song is about, well, an angel of love. And if you're lonely or are in doubt, Cham will be there to comfort you. I mean, the first verse roughly translates to, look, can't you see her white wings? Those eyes gazing at you, that sweet voice and those gentle hands. They exist only for you, protecting you from so very close by. The concert is seamlessly intercut with other scenes like Mima grocery shopping while she gets milk and fish food, as well as her manager Tadakoro and assistant Rumi having an argument about Mima's change in career. I love the shot of her in between the reflections of the two opposing sides and how her body language makes her so small. But when we cut back to the performance, that's when we get our introduction to Mimania. He got a job at the venue as a security guard where he gets to watch Cham perform, I'm assuming often. Yay. This is where we get my favorite shot in the movie. It's early on, I know, but I just love how symbolic it is of Mimania angling his hand to make it look like he's holding Mima in the palm of his hand. With what Cham is singing, can you see why he holds her up to such a high pedestal? He doesn't view her as a human being with emotions and ambitions, just an object of his affection, the embodiment of his obsession. The vessel to project his desires onto. Why must this shot cut to such a terrifying close-up of him? Hecklers begin tainting this perfect image he has of Mima, so he goes to confront them. As it starts getting violent, Mima stops it, and right before the leader of the hecklers, Tadashi, can try to throw a can at her, Mimania stops him. They retreat, and Mima gives a grateful smile to him, not knowing the kind of person she gave the kind gesture to. To a reclusive incel like him, you know that smile means the world to him. After it's announced Mima is leaving the trio to become an actress, she sings her last song, as three of the fans we saw earlier lament how the pop idol and actor pipeline is inevitable. One of them even references the metamorphosis part of the complete metamorphosis subtitle from the light novel. It might sound like a slight against the movie to say this sequence is my favorite scene in the movie since it's the very opening, but it's because of how well it's edited and how Satoshi Kon eases you into the madness. And also because Angel of Love really does slap that hard. But as you can see, there's already wildly different differences that set the light novel and movie apart from one another. The book has already set out its terrifying tone for its narrative, but just you wait when the movie kicks into high gear. Chapter 2 begins with Mima in her apartment, a modest one with a combined living room and bedroom. And it cuts right to the chase. Mima gets out of the shower after hearing the phone ringing, and it's the freaking stalker. He breathes into the phone for a bit and Mima starts getting annoyed. It's been established she's been getting phone calls like this for a week before the events of the book, but this is the first time he actually speaks to her and tells her he's a big fan of hers. I want to save you, the man mumbled. I want to save you before you go down the wrong path. I'm not trying to bother you. Honestly, I'm not. And after a few more exchanges, he says, I'm coming to meet you. I promise I'll come to you soon. I'll come to meet you, and I'll save you. I promise I will. Mima frantically hangs up the phone, and at this point there's already rumors of her changing her public image. But a big difference between the movie and the light novel is that instead of her being a part of this pure and innocent pop trio and leaving to pursue a more mature career in acting, here she's a pure and innocent solo artist who will start presenting herself more risquély. So there's no Cham, it's just her. And a rival pop idol I'll be getting to in a bit. Meanwhile, movie Mima gets into her apartment, and just like book Mima's, it's also modest with a combined bedroom and living room, showing that not all pop stars get to live in luxury like we assume here with American ones. Mima feeds her fish and collapses on her bed as the news reports of a recent earthquake, perhaps referencing the Kobe earthquake since it's the reason the movie's animated in the first place. But not long after, she gets up and takes down her Cham poster, figuratively and literally removing the group as she begins a new chapter in her life. Her mom calls her and we get one of the most iconic lines in the movie.
アイドルのイメージはもう息苦しいんや。
However, someone else calls in, and when Mima accepts it, she hears nothing but heavy breathing on the other line. This is the first time she's received a call like this, so she gets frustrated and hangs up. But a few moments later, she receives a fax from an unknown person, with the word traitor manically printed all over it. We get this awesome shot of her quickly turning around to face the window and the camera panning out from it. The rhythmic printing of the fax machine morphs into the score, and it's just mwah! Yeah, so there is a bit of mystery during the beginning of this movie. I mean, through subtext, you could probably pick up that Mimania was the person on the line and who sent the fax machine, but it's not as blatant as it is in the light novel. Speaking of which, this is just awful, Mima said, batting her wide, round eyes. She raised a hand to her slender nose and took in a deep, stuffed-up snuffle. Of all the times to catch a cold, why now? So as the movie progresses, you'll see it take advantage and do these fake-outs to trick the audience, but it's not completely absent in the light novel. This is spoken after the confrontation on the phone, but there's a clear time jump, so you think Mima's talking about that, but she's not, and it's great. Mima's assistant Rumi and manager Tadakoro are introduced in this scene, and when Rumi's going off to get coffee for the two of them, Mima tells Tadakoro about the strange phone call she received. Initially, Tadakoro dismisses it when she says the stalker thinks she's going in the wrong direction, but after she reveals he wants to meet her, that's when Tadakoro takes things seriously. Later, Rumi goes into Mima's green room to grab something, and somehow the stalkers crept in. Yoshikazu Takeuchi once again describes the mysterious appearance of this man by saying, his face was harshly backlit and impossible to discern. The stalker gives Rumi a scrap of paper and he bolts. Bye, I guess. The movie plays with our expectations. As Mima closes the curtains, we get a voiceover of her saying,
あなた誰なの?
It excellently transitions to the next scene as it's revealed she's repeating a line of hers for the first role she received as a brand new actress, a dramatic crime TV show called Double Bind. From this point on, the movie plays with the story within a story narrative while it's completely absent in the light novel. Unlike book Mima, movie Mima doesn't tell anyone about the phone call from the night before, though earlier she got a fan letter that said, I'm always looking in Mima's room, so she asks Rumi about it, and Rumi explains it's a website. As a reminder, this movie came out in 1997 when the internet was in its infancy, so, and I'm sorry in advance to my older viewers who are going to feel incredibly dated by me saying this, as someone who grew up using the internet, it is really fascinating to hear people talk about it as this crazy new discovery. After Rumi tries to explain the basics, she asks Mima if she understands, and she responds with this. Oh, she's adorable. Meanwhile, Book Mima is watching a televised interview of the rival pop idol I mentioned earlier, Erik, and this character has one of, if not the biggest change from their movie counterpart. Despite having debuted 2 years after Mima, Eri views her as a washed-up has-been, which in turn makes Mima have a distaste for her, though she prefers to keep it to herself and even feels bad when her loathing begins to anger her. Eri had supposedly turned 16 this year, but Mima placed her at 18 or even older, though, admittedly, the singer's facial features and figure did retain a girlish quality. She appeared innocent enough, but her eyes gave her away. I'm saying this so that you all will remember it. It will become important later. Meanwhile, Eri is way different in the movie. She's a minor character in the movie itself, but the female lead in Double Bind. In movie, Mima really admires her for being a great actress. They don't have much screen time together aside from working in a few scenes, and Mima referring to Eri as her character offset and her playfully laughing it off, as well as her sharing a laugh with a co-star before they have to put on their acting faces when the cameras start rolling.
犯人がどうして被害者の皮を剥ぐのかわかる?
そういうのに性欲を感じてるんじゃ。
Man, how crazy would that be if they got that idea from somewhere specific? Anyway, while Mima's nerves start ramping up while she's on the set, we get a glimpse of Mimania amongst the crew members. Is it fiction? Is it reality? Who knows? A man from the TV station brings some fan mail and gives the one and only letter addressed to Mima to Tadakoro, and as the director's counting down and Mima opens her mouth to speak her one and only line, this happens. As it falls to the floor and begins soaking up blood, Mima finds a scrap of paper from the letter bomb that says, "Is a warning. The next one will be real." In the light novel, Tadakoro talks to Murano Yuji, a photographer he hired to take racy pictures of Mima, but that doesn't become significant until later, so we cut to Mima inviting Rumi to her apartment for the first time. We get a little backstory on Rumi, which is interesting, basically about how she moved to the big city to pursue a career in singing, and she didn't have what it took. But she finds joy in being Mima's assistant instead, and it gives her a chance to live vicariously through her. The movie does the same, where Tadakoro and Rumi passively talk about her not being able to make it into the industry, but just you wait. While they're in the apartment drinking tea, just like in the movie later on, Rumi shares a scrap of paper that she received from the stalker to Mima that has this delightful little letter written on it. Dear Mima-sama, I expect that you might never read this letter. That's because I am unable to mail it to you. I don't know your address. I've tried as best as I can to learn it, but to no avail. I am writing this with the belief that you will read my message to you. Here it is. Please stay the way you are. I hope you will never change and that you will always stay the same. I heard a rumor, which I highly doubt is based on any merit, among a fraction of your devoted fans that you are going to put out a risque photo book. Personally, I cannot believe such a nasty rumor. But if someone is pressuring you, forcing you to do it against your will, I will stake my life to protect you. You are Kirigoe Mima. Please go on being Kirigoe Mima. If you were to change, I don't know what I would do. I might even lose myself completely. The next thing I know, we both could be dead. I don't want that to happen, so please, stay as you are. Sincerely, your darling Rose. I forgot to mention that earlier in her career, Mima used the nickname Charming Rose, so that's why you'll see the stalker use rose motifs throughout the light novel. P.S. I'm worried that this letter might not reach you. I will call you soon to find out. I promise. After Rumi apologizes for keeping the letter from her and Mima forgives her, the phone starts ringing. At this point in both stories, the stalkers are at different stages in their master plan. The stalker is definitely being a creep, child kidnapping aside, while Mimania has already started making direct attacks towards Mima's associates. After the letter bomb scene, there's a brief but cute scene of Rumi setting up Mima's very first computer. Mima really doesn't understand a damn thing about the internet, and it's so freaking cute.
で、ほら、ロケーションってとこに URL を入れるの難しくないでしょ？お願い、ルミちゃん。日本語で説明して。
However, she brings up the attack to Rumi, but she's very nonchalant in response, saying they're not going to contact the police because it was just a prank, bro. In the book, Tadakoro's line of thought about not wanting to contact the police is more reasonable since the stalker hasn't made any direct threats. Yet. Later that night, Mima finally sees her room for herself. The Mima's Room website, that is. And it's awfully specific. Perhaps too specific. Things like how she gets off the train left foot first for good luck and buying milk and fish food like what we saw her do at the beginning of the movie. Terrifying indeed. Chapter 3 begins with the phone continuing to ring, but this time is from the stalker's perspective. Just before it rings for the 40th time, he gives up. Not because he realizes what he's doing is wrong. No, it's because he wants to meet her in person. I exist to save her. I exist to prevent her from going down the wrong path. He looked to the life-size poster of Kirigoe Mima he kept on his wall. Youthful and pure, she smiled back at him. I'm here to protect that smile. I must never forget that. Takeuchi takes note of the multitude of tapes the stalker has of footage he's recorded of various J-pop idols for who knows how long, as he watches some of Mima, one that's just after her debut, and a most recent one with a sense of maturity in her appearance. He gets upset over the fact that she, a human being, changes over the course of time, so he does the one thing any reasonable person would do. Pull out a gleaming, shiny knife and stare at it with malicious intent. He gripped the weapon by the handle, and his mouth twisted into a smile. This was it. If all else failed, this was how he could save her. Great. Splendid even. Meanwhile, in the movie, Tadakoro and Rumi debate if Mima making this change in appearance and perception was worth it, and Tadakoro makes that offhand comment about Rumi's past. Later, when Mima enters her agency, there's a newspaper clipping taped to the wall of the elevator. The heckler who was harassing her at her final performance is in critical condition after a hit and run. After she reads it, she spots Mimania just outside the building, smiling as the elevator doors close. That's suspicious. That's weird. At this point in the light novel, Mima has made the official decision to up her promiscuous public appearance as she goes to attend a meeting where her costume is revealed. It's white, has thin straps, has a deep neckline, the skirt is mini, and has ribbon motifs, specifically on the back of her head and on the back of her skirt. The description alone sounds similar to the one she wears at the beginning of the movie, and that's supposed to be her pure and innocent costume. So it's just an interesting thing to notice. Oh, and the song she's releasing to promote this new change is literally called Sexy Valley. Just wanted to point that out. Along with all this, there's a planned photo book she's going to do that will be chock full of risque photos of her. Another change about Rumi's character is that she's initially hesitant about Mima doing a racy photo book because she's afraid of how obsessive fans like the stalker will react, but later she's encouraging and happy about Mima changing her image. The meeting goes well and Mima and Rumi go back to Mima's apartment, not knowing the stalker is just behind them. He's wearing the shirt that has the unusual anime girl on it, as his hair formed shadows that concealed his face, but his queerly glimmering eyes betrayed a tormented mind. He muttered to himself, the words spoken but unheard, "I can't wait any longer. There's no more time." Back to the movie, the double-bind screenplay of Shibuya has decided to give Mima a larger role in the story, in which her character gets assaulted in a strip club. Rumi is furious about it, but Mima is determined to do it.
だって本当にレイプされるわけじゃないんだよ。
Oh, you sweet summer child. Later that night, when she's going home, we get one of the most iconic shots in the movie when her reflection transforms into her past pop idol self rejecting the role, and it's the first time we see this apparition before it continues to haunt and taunt Mima throughout the movie. I won't go into much detail about the crew shooting this scene, just that Mima's stripper outfit is similar to her Angel of Love one with its white and frilly fabric, but now that's used in the context of sex work, it symbolizes the death of innocence. They even replaced the pink with red, which is known for being a passionate color, but also to foreshadow just how bloody the movie's gonna get from this point on. So they shoot the scene and it's very hard to watch, including for the characters themselves, particularly Rumi, who storms out in tears. Mima gets home, ready to feed her fish, only to find out they're all dead. Turns out her mental health is already starting to decline if she forgot to feed her fish after a couple of days. And this is the final straw. She, to put it lightly, crashes out, and we find out that her cheerful agreement to shooting the scene was a facade. Fake Mima pops up again to taunt her as we get another one of my favorite shots in the movie. Ugh, it's so cool. We cut back to the fish tank where two fish are in it now, alive and swimming without a care in the world. I don't think they're actually there, since Satoshi Kon stated it's meant to symbolize the two identities that are now within Mima. Anyway, Shibuya gets shanked. Be careful in elevators, kids. We get another fake out as we see a siren that appears to be going toward the crime scene, but it ends up being a kid on a toy car. This movie's got a sense of humor, and I like that. Speaking of fake Mima continues to mess with real Mima, including a scene when Tadakoro tells her to smile, so she puts on a fake smile, and that's when fake Mima shows up. At this point in the narratives, we have the definitive death of Mima, the pure pop idol. The movie goes a bit further with this death by having her be simulated in a brutal assault, which is the inciting incident that causes her mental health to spiral, and we find out that no, Mima does not like what she's going through. I find this so much more interesting than a light novel where, yeah, book Mima gets hesitant and nervous, but she changes her image with little to no internal conflict. She doesn't have a past version of herself following her, and she doesn't have the Mima's Room website that's tracking her every move. She does learn to embrace her sexuality, so good for her, but her main motivation in doing all this is to triumph over Eri. So I find movie Mima grappling with her agency being ripped away from her while she puts on a show for the press to be more fascinating, since this is what the entertainment industry does to a lot of women. Her character in Double Bind is also dealing with a split personality, so it makes things worse for her, but it does heighten the stakes for the film. So, chapter 4 begins with two people having sex in very graphic detail. You think it's a stalker because at one point he thinks, so this is what an idol feels like, and you think that idol is Mima. But it's Eri. When they finish, the man decides now is a good time to ask how old she is, and she doesn't answer the question. The man's name is Shin Sakuragi, a reporter, and, like Eri, his name is given to someone completely different in the movie. He's Eri's co-star from Double Bind, but he barely plays a role aside from playing in character on the show. Eri tells Sakuragi that she knows Mima has secretly seen another singer, around Naoto, but she doesn't have any proof. The reason why this is considered shocking in the narrative is because idols have to be presented as being single, or rather, sexually available to the public. That's how you get otakus like the stalker, who fantasize about being with a particular idol. So yes, if it isn't obvious yet, Eri is being a major hypocrite, but what she's doing is sabotaging Mima for her own gain. Meanwhile, movie Eri is shooting scenes with Mima with nothing really to write home about. Seriously, these two are not the same character. And here's where we get to the photo shoot and where the photographer Murano plays a larger role. I mentioned him earlier, but they do make a point to say Murano doesn't photograph women very often, let alone in this way. But Tadakoro brought him in because he knew he would be able to make Mima feel comfortable during the photo shoot. They do the shoot, they don't go into any specifics, but Murano treats her well and is respectful towards her, and even though she was really nervous when she arrived, she felt more comfortable as it went on. It really was satisfying. I wasn't just saying that. I found myself thinking, I actually am pretty sexy. At a certain point, I wasn't doing the photo shoot just to do it. I truly wanted to make the best photos I could. Again, good for her. But how does the movie do it? Book Murano's photos were not sexual in nature, while movie Murano's very much are and is known to get his subjects to strip. So we see that as Mima progressively takes off more clothes. At their most extreme, Book Mima's pictures are very suggestive, as there's a description of one with a foggy glass pane covering her most intimate areas, while it's a whole lot of full frontal in the movie. Crazy. However, before the photo shoot, Mima hides in the bathroom in shame while the crew's waiting on her as fake Mima retorts that she was better off as a pop idol. Mima gets home that night to take a bath. This time she strips on her own volition and in the comfort of her bathroom. Did you know that Darren Aronofsky paid $10,000 for the rights to recreate it in Requiem for a Dream? No. No. We are not doing that. We are not spreading that misinformation. He did not pay anything. All it is an homage. That's all. Cohen said it himself. And a side tangent I want to get into is that one of my professors voiced Murano in the English dub. I had voice actor Jameson Price for this voice and articulation class earlier this year, and after I wore this perfect blue sweatshirt to his class a couple times, he told me he was in the dub. I said I'd never seen the name in the credits or even on his Wikipedia page, so he explained that anime dubbing was kind of frowned upon in the 90s, but he needed the money, so he went in, said some lines that he thought were for some other certain film genre.
Oh, I like that expression. Try running your fingers through your hair. That's it. Hold it right there. You look beautiful. Arch your lips a little. Nice. Now let's take the top off.
Left and was uncredited. At least he got $50 from it. IMDb says he was credited as James Lyon, and it does show up in the credits, so I guess it's more of a case of him going under a different name than being completely removed from the credits. And I was going to bring my perfect blue steelbook for him to sign on the last day of class, but I freaking forgot to bring it, so now I look like an idiot because I don't have any proof. But just please believe me. I do think Perfect Blue is better subtitled, but it is fun to switch it to the dub for a second and hear Jameson's voice. Anyway, that was a fun side quest. Now let's go back to the book. The stalker flays his own skin. Earlier, Tadakuro mentioned a guy who kidnapped and killed a girl, so we don't know what the stalker did with her remains, but we do know that a piece of her skin is currently in his freezer, so he starts... Look, I'm not going to read from the book because they describe it in very graphic detail, so let me Dude. There's like 3 pages of this. Oh yeah, and earlier, since he figured out where Mima lives by following her and Rumi, he puts a rose on her doorstep with the note attached that includes, "I've made up my mind. I will take action. Sincerely, your darling Rose." Man, this guy is so cool, right? Ugh. Later, Mima gets home to celebrate the first live performance of Sexy Valley with Tadakuro and Rumi. And while Tadakuro goes out to get more beer, he finds out that someone is loitering outside her apartment. So he chases them and beats them up, only for it to be revealed that it's Shin Sakuragi, the reporter Aries sent to go find Mima hanging out with Ran Naato, which actually is revealed that she was going out on multiple dates with him 2 years earlier. Mima confronts Eri about it since this is a new low for her, but of course she's denying it, so Mima leaves her by dumping a cup of water on her. She stood up for herself. Good for her. Mimania is furious about Mima's newly released scandalous photos, so he buys all the magazines just so that no one else can have them. Similar to the book, his living space is cramped and cluttered, and fake Mima tells him that she's the real Mima, and the other one is an imposter, so he decides he must get rid of her. After doing the procedure on his arm. It gets infected and unholy fluids start coming out of it because, yeah, no wonder. The plan of his isn't working, so while staring at his poster of Mima, he imagines her speaking to him. Innocently smiling, she gazed at him. She spoke inside him. If you really care about me, don't give up. Keep trying. Just a little bit longer. Apparently a young girl is not working for him, so he needs to find another victim. He pulls out a tape labeled For Self-Pleasure, Idols, Volume 3, and starts scouting. So this is another major difference from the light novel and movie. The stalker in the book is an obsessed fan for idols in general, with his favorite being Mima, while Mimania is exclusive to her. I mean, you saw his room with how many pictures he has of her, so his motives are more concise and the stakes are higher, making it a more effective conflict. The stalker continues looking, and the book states that he's never touched himself while looking at pictures of her, let alone having fantasies of her, because, oh, that would stain her purity. Never mind the fact that he's doing all this murder and skin stuff in the name of her. Then Erik shows up, and he starts feeling things. Mind you, this girl is suggested to be 16 years old, but he starts blaming her for making him feel these things. So he decides to make her his new test subject. To save the charming Rose, he needed to know the feel of an idol's skin. Meanwhile, how's Movie Murano doing? Oh. Looks like he found himself in a sticky wicket. That's unfortunate. Mima's mental health continues to go wackadoo as she wakes up and finds herself in eerily similar situations with one another. Having tea with Rumi, messing up lines in the scene with Erik, all while her bedroom gets progressively messier with each time she awakens. At this point, we only have 20 minutes in the movie now, and I'm trying to make the events of the light novel coincide with the movie, so for now let's focus on the events of the book, which derails even further than what you originally thought Perfect Blue to be. Erik meets up with Mima's old flame, Iran, seduces him, and he gives her a picture of the both of them. Great. She leaves, and as she's waiting for a taxi, the stalker approaches, and once again he's depicted mysteriously. With the neon lights at his back, she couldn't make out the details of his face, but something about the man's silhouette unsettled her. The stalker blackmails Erik into going to his apartment to have sex, in exchange for pictures of her and Iran doing it to not be published since he managed to take pictures of them a minute ago. It absolutely reeks in his place, and after the stalker says it's the skin of a rotting girl, Erik nodded just to move things along, but she failed to comprehend the gravity of what he just said. And then, this is when things start getting messy. Again, I'll spare the graphic details, but he ties her down with tape. She says if he unties her and gives her the camera he used, she won't say anything to the police and her body is his. He forces himself on her. He assaults her, both sexually and physically. He blames her for making him feel and do these disgusting things, and after she shows him the photo of Mima and Iran, he gets really upset. He believes he's the only person worthy of Mima's love. So, the stalker gets the knife, and he starts using it around her face while she's still alive. Despite being such an unlikable character, you do feel for her at this moment. I mean, no one deserves this kind of treatment. This sequence of events have been intercut with Mima getting ready to perform Sexy Valley on this big nighttime TV show. So the stalker is interrupted by it and watches it, much to his dismay. With her newly revealed racy costume, the shock of it came like a hammer blow to his head. Aha! Aha! Movie foreshadowing. The stalker successfully takes off Erik's face, but after seeing Mima on TV, he's ready to approach her. They haven't revealed his full plan yet, just something about his skin and Mima's, which, ugh. Originally, the man had planned on flaying her completely, but he didn't have the time for so extensive a test anymore. Oh yeah, totally, you don't want to inconvenience her too much, that'd just be mean. So after performing her song, Sexy Valley, she's left alone in her green room. But it was because Rumi and Tadakoro left to set up a surprise party at her apartment, so she goes home in taxi, growing ever so dreadfully fearful of the stalker. The book also makes a point to show who her target demographic is. When she exited the TV station's rear doors, a cluster of passionate fans, all men, were waiting for her. You also see this in the movie with various shots of audiences while Cham is performing. Speaking of the movie, there's a scene from earlier that echoes the one in the light novel. After shooting the strip club scene, she's left alone in the dressing room as Tadakoro is waiting in the car and offers her a nice dinner for her efforts. There's a lingering shot of Mimania watching Mima and Tadakoro leave too. Satoshi Kon himself sees the assault scene as the death of Mima the pop idol, and in the scene following it, he points out that she's dressed in black as if she's in mourning, and her posture in the chair is as though she's praying. He was such a visionary. In the book, Rumi is in Mima's apartment getting ready for her to arrive, but someone knocks on the door and it ends up being the stalker. The stalker asks for Rumi's help and she refuses, but he blackmails her after giving her the photo of Mima and Aran together, so she relents. And so he takes her to an old abandoned TV station. Now what's going on in the movie? Mwah, cinema. Mima and Mimania finally meet as he kidnaps her and takes her to one of the double-bind sets. She takes a beating and it is rough to watch. But just before it's too late, Mima gives Mimania a hearty bonk on the head with a hammer. Good for her. Rumi finds a disheveled Mima, and when she takes her back to Mimania's body, it's gone. Mima arrives at her apartment with the door unlocked, and after finding a red rose petal, she realizes what happened, and the phone rings. She picks it up to find the stalker waiting for her, claiming if she doesn't come to that old TV station in 5 minutes, Rumi dies. She absolutely books it through the districts of Tokyo, and she gets there 2 minutes late. But it's fine, because the stalker doesn't care about Rumi and he wasn't actually going to kill her, he just wanted Mima to get there as fast as she could. He's wearing the shirt that has the anime girl on it, and we finally find out the meaning behind it. It was a character from an anime TV show called Be an Idol, which had heavily featured Mima in its advertising. Once her involvement had finished, she had little enough reason to think about the show, but she remembered the t-shirt. It was a prize from a promotional giveaway held when the anime first aired. Movie Mima wasn't involved in any anime productions, maybe because she's unknowingly in one, whoa, but I do think it's referenced in one shot earlier in the movie where we see a hyper-stylized anime character contrasting with the more realistic human designs. Speaking of Rumi, both versions of her have an identical backstory about her wanting to be a pop idol. It's best exemplified in this scene before the stalker approaches Mima's apartment and finds Rumi there instead. When Rumi's dreams of becoming an idol were broken, Mima had become her emotional bedrock. By projecting her dreams onto Mima, Rumi had found a new purpose in life. So yeah, cool, good for her. The movie, however, takes it to its most extreme, and that's how we get its biggest twist. After Mima tries to show Rumi Mimania's body, Rumi takes her back home. Or does she? After seeing her Cham poster back up and her fish back from the dead, she finds out that no, she's not in Mima's room. She's in Rumi's room, where she has dissociative identity disorder, where she thinks she's Mima, so technically we are in Mima's room, but that's not the Mima's room we've known the entire time. Basically, the way I interpret fake Mima is that she was a part of real Mima's imagination, but by the time Rumi dresses up as her, Mima's so far gone that she interprets it as fake Mima, but through the medium of animation we're able to understand that it's Rumi. You know? So while in the book Rumi was used as a pawn for Mimania and nothing else, movie Rumi willingly helps Mimania and is actually the mastermind behind everything while she uses him as a scapegoat.
でもアイドルはね、ファンの人たちが守ってくれるの。ミマのお願いなんか何でも聞いてくれるんだよ。ミマニアさんはちょっと失敗だったけど。
Oh yeah, and he's dead now. And also Tadakoro. R.I.P. bro. Back to the light novel, the stalker reveals his full plans to Mima and Rumi. Basically, he really wants Mima to go back the way she was during her debut. That's why he took her to this TV station, since it was where her first performance of her debut song, ironically called Innocence Forever, was filmed when a giant fan was used to make cherry blossoms dance in the air while she was singing. I admit I maybe went a little overboard with how I brought you here. Oh, shut up. So he wants to cut off her skin and put it on him so that they can be one and the same. On the outside will be Mima. On the inside will be me. We two will be one. The Mimakira Gogh of today will go back to being the Mimakira Gogh of her debut. Oh, this guy is such a freak. It's kind of one of those has the best intentions motivations you often find in antagonistic but sympathetic characters. He thinks he's doing what's best for both of them, but obviously there's absolutely nothing about him to sympathize him for, so it doesn't matter. After Rumi and Mima try to escape, the stalker ties Mima up and forces her to watch as he takes the knife and literally yanks off his own face. All in the name of devotion, he says. As strange as the thought was, amid this horrific, stomach-turning ritual, the sight reminded Mima of a bug shedding its chrysalis to emerge a butterfly. It was at this moment when I audibly went, oh, because, complete metamorphosis. The stalker starts closing in on Mima until Rumi bonks him with an industrialized bottle of facial lotion, so off they go into the dilapidated darkness. Back to the movie, Rumi/fake Mima pulls out an ice pick to try to kill real Mima, and she goes so far as jumping off the balcony with Rumi not too far behind. We get an intense chase sequence as, much like the light novel, Mima desperately runs through the districts of Tokyo late at night. It's not until Mima snatches her wig does it slap Rumi back to reality. Or maybe more so stab. Squish. Rumi staggers out onto the street, somehow still alive. I know I've mentioned iconic shots a few times, but this is undeniably the most iconic shot from the movie as fake Mima. Right before a truck runs her over, Mima pushes her out of the way at the last second. Some time passes and Mima, who's now a successful actress, visits Rumi at a mental hospital, who's still struggling with DID and sees herself as her own version of Mima. When she leaves, Mima overhears two nurses debating if that was the Mima gogh, and she gets in her car and proudly proclaims she's a real thing as it smash cuts to the credits. I have a storyboard book version of this movie, and I found out that the very ending was more like an ellipsis than a period it ended up being. After Mima states she's a real thing, we see her drive off, but I prefer the credits starting right after she says it because it's more of a statement. I'm real. Deal with it. So overall, it is a bit of a happy ending with Mima thriving after such a traumatic experience. There is something slightly off-putting about the way Mima says she's the real thing and how she smiles at herself, but it is a banger movie that I will talk more about in the conclusion. During the climax of the light novel, Mima and Rumi get separated and they're stumbling their way through the darkness. The stalker attacks Rumi, but she's saved by Tadakoro Murano since they went to Mima's apartment and deduced that something was wrong at the old station. So Murano tackles the stalker, and the stalker ends up falling on his knife where it stabs him in the throat. But oh, don't you worry, he's somehow still alive, because he catches up to Mima where they have their final confrontation, on a stage, just like the movie. Mima tells Tadakoro to turn on the fan, where a multitude of these cherry blossoms begin dancing in the air as she and the stalker struggle, where at one point his lipless mouth closes in on her and it's just Mima finds his knife, the one he took out of his throat, drives it into his shoulder, is still alive as he continues toward her, then she drives it into his eye. He's still alive, and to prove the point that no pain will be able to stop him, he just stabs himself in the side. Mima does some sick self-defense move where she positions him to roll off her back and off the stage into a basement. Down, down he goes, where he gets chopped up by the giant fan that helped Mima become the pop idol she is today. For a brief eternity, his blood-stained head hung in the air. To Mima's horror, his mouth opened wide and cried out, Ma. But then the head was sucked into the fan, butchered by its spinning blades. The man's blood and flesh scattered everywhere, staining the white paper flowers red. Mima watched the blood-stained petals dance through the wind. As they passed by, they no longer resembled cherry blossoms. Instead, they looked like vivid red roses. The passion, the obsession of the so-called darling rose, stalker, freak, and monster, had been so strange that he transformed the blossoms into rose petals. At least, in the moment, that was how Mima saw it. The end. We don't get any closure on Eri, and actually the stalker left her body like that while he was leaving because he didn't care about the police finding it. One of the things about the light novel that fascinated me the most was the difference in motivations between the stalker characters. Both are projecting with how they proclaim that sexuality is bad and they hate seeing Mima grow into a mature woman, yet they commit these heinous sex crimes. The stalker unfortunately actually follows through with what he does to Eri compared to Mimania since Mima stopped him in time. There's the stalking and the killing, but also the self-mutilation and the flaying and all that, and we do get more of his insight since we're able to read his thoughts and emotions, while Mimania spends so much time silently in the shadows. These two characterizations work well for the mediums they're in, but I won't deny it is interesting to at least know what his thought process is. However, I much prefer movie Mima's storyline for reasons I mentioned earlier, and she is the main character after all, so that's why I'd say the movie has a stronger narrative. Another interesting thing I found about the light novel is that it's more overt with how much of a loser he is, because there's a strong sense of patheticness to him. The man caressed the poster Mima's face. I'm alright now. Look, I'm not depressed at all. To prove his point, he spun around once. An exaggerated, goofy display. The man struck a pose, his arms and legs bent, backside sticking out a little. It was too surreal, repulsive, a sight from a nightmare. This dingy man striking a pop idol's pose in this dingy room. But at the same time, it hits you over the head when he becomes this inhuman, skinless monstrosity and how he's able to bear so many wounds that would otherwise kill an average person. Mima thought, He's not a human anymore. He's a monster of red flesh, the mass of blood and flesh that used to be a man. Hunched over, shoulders rocking, with his crimson visage thrust forward, he seemed more demon than man. He was a freak, and not just any freak, but one of total and unparalleled monstrosity. You get the idea. Overall, I did find Perfect Blue: Complete Metamorphosis to be a really engaging read. Is it as satisfying as the movie? No, but it is a solid foundation for what ended up helping create an animated masterpiece, and it's interesting to experience a different take on the story that I already thought I knew so well. I do prefer the more mind-bending aspects and stronger themes of female identity from the movie, especially with it being more focused on Mima and her deteriorating psyche. That makes a much more compelling watch. But I couldn't have guessed that the story could be more gruesome. You could argue the light novel tips the scale and ends up being gratuitous, especially since the violence is almost exclusively toward women. And with the aforementioned graphic sex scene and its vivid descriptions of Mima's and Eri's mature costumes, it feels male-gazy, while the movie makes a clear critique about that. Satoshi Kon actually didn't intend for his film to be a deconstruction of the Japanese pop idol industry, but it kind of makes the movie even more genius because of that. If you're a fan of the movie, then I recommend reading its source material, but I do bring up a strong trigger warning before you read it. I didn't even mention its follow-up novel, Perfect Blue: Awakened from a Dream. I haven't read it yet, but from my understanding, it's not a direct sequel, but just an anthology that takes place in the same universe. There's also a live-action movie, but it's not a remake of Satoshi Kon's. I think it's a loose adaptation of Awakened from a Dream. I've been wanting to watch it, and it would be interesting to make a video on it. Those Zelcher Productions made a really good one that you should watch. I'll have the link in the description. And going back to Darren Aronofsky, there's also Black Swan if you want to count that as a remake, I guess. Go read the light novel for yourself, but before I go, I would like to say that YouTube started this new thing called Hype, where you can give a certain amount of hype points to a video, and it'll help smaller creators like myself get their voices heard among this vast algorithm. It should be just below this video where the like and share buttons are, at least on mobile, so if you do give this video some extra love, I would really appreciate it. With that being said, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hype, and join my Patreon, and I will see you later. Okay, bye!